So let's create update country action, and the action will need to accept an object of country from body, just like we did from the create country action. And of course this will most likely come from a submitted form. So let's create the action, and the URI will be simply API/countries/country ID. Now you may ask, why do we actually need the country ID? Doesn't the ID come also from the object that we're sending from the body? And yes, this object is being sent from the form, and the form can have a hidden field for the ID of the country. But this ID is basically hard-coded. That's the ID of the country that we are updating, and this is going to be added to the address bar. So if this ID doesn't match the ID coming from the body, then we know that the user is trying to somehow manipulate the update and has a different ID in the address bar than is the ID that is actually hidden in the form, and therefore we will refuse to make the update because he is trying to update a different country and basically manipulate the whole process. Alright, so here we are obviously updating a resource, so we need HTTP put request, and we need to add the country ID to it. So we'll do HTTP put and add the ID. So it's going to be country ID parameter. So first we validate that the country object is not null, meaning that the form wasn't submitted as blank or empty. And if it is, then we'll return bad request. So if it equals null, return bad request along with the model state. Next, we need to make sure that the IDs match, that the user is not trying to manipulate the update process. So we check if the country ID matches the ID in the form or coming from the form itself. So we'll do an if statement and check if the country ID does not equal the updated country info.id, then we have another bad request. And we can pass in model state. Now of course this wouldn't actually result in an error in the model state. This is simply our condition in order to continue the update process. That's why we simply return bad request. So if the IDs match, we know that we are updating a single country, but now we need to validate that the country actually exists. So we will do an if statement and check the country repository, and we'll go to the country exists method, pass in the ID, and if the country doesn't exist, if it's an invalid country, we of course return not found. But we are not finished with the if statements yet. Next we need to validate that we are not trying to update the country with a name that already exists. In other words, that we are not trying to enter a duplicate country. So we'll call the isDuplicate method from the country repository. So if the country repository dot isDuplicate country name, and we'll pass in the ID and the name, the updated name from the object. So if this returns true, means that it's a duplicate country, we can now return the same error we returned over here, which is that the country already exists. So I'm just gonna copy this and paste it right here. Except this one is not country to create, this one is updated country info.name. And finally, if everything is okay, we still need to validate the final model state to make sure that something unusual, something that we missed, didn't go wrong. So we'll validate the model state with the if statement like we always do. So again, I'll just copy that and paste it here. Now of course, you could have made it all into one single long if statement with AND. It would be if this is null and this is not true and the country doesn't exist and so forth. But I like to return different errors, so I do if statements like this, so I can at least a little bit personalize the error messages. So what's next? Well, now we are ready to update the country. So just like when we created the country, we'll do an if statement and check if the update succeeds. And if it doesn't, we'll return an error message with a status code 500. So again, I'll copy this and paste it here. But this time we don't want to create country, we want to call the update country and pass in the updated country info object into it. So we try to do the update, and if it fails, then we will do the model state something went wrong, and not saving but updating the name of the country, and we'll return status code 500. And here when we created the country, we returned back to the get country and displayed the newly created resource. When it comes to update, we usually don't do that. We'll simply return no content because we did not create anything, we simply updated what already existed, just changed few properties. So we will simply return no content. And the last thing, as always, is to put in the response types. So we have 400 for bad request, 404, 422, another bad request, and then 500. And finally, no content is 204, so that is our OK response. So here are the response types, and notice that I am not adding any type of to the 204, which is no content, because there is no type. There's no content, so there is no type either. Alright, I think we're ready to test it, so let's have a look how to actually perform the update in the Postman next.